collaborate together. It's a bit of an off-the-cuff stream, seeing what we can um, think about doing in the future. What do you have? It sounded like you had an idea, Melissa. What was on your mind?
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. Yeah, I was thinking we could just share maybe like our favorite RStudio productivity hack, something that makes your life a little bit easier when you're doing some R programming.
Yeah, I love it. I always try and stress the importance of quality of life stuff when we spend so much time in that IDE. There's a lot more to what we do than just code, 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 code.
Absolutely.
You wanna get us started?
Yeah, for sure. All right, so I wanted to talk about one of my favorite RStudio add-ins, and that is I don't know if it's Styler or Style R,
Mm,
but yeah, that add-in. So I'm going to show an example of that first. So
yes.
I'm going to load the tidyverse, and then let's use the diamonds data set as an example here. So just take a quick look at what that looks like. I'm just going to look at the variable names. All right, so what the style R styler add-in is going to do is it's going to make sure that your script is conforming to the tidyverse style guide. And a lot of the times I find with myself, I think that I know the tidyverse style guide really well. And then I use this add-in and I realize I do not have it memorized very well. So
Hmm.
it's very, very helpful for me to just on the go make sure that my code looks aesthetically pleasing. So let's say, for example, I'm gonna not follow the tidyverse style guide here. And let's say I wanted to create three new variables using the mutate function. So I'm gonna create a variable called x_10, and that's gonna take the value of the x variable multiplied by 10 for some reason, and that I'm interested in that. And let's say I also want to create a variable called y_10, and that's going to be the y variable multiplied by 10. And what I have right here does not follow the tidyverse style guide. But if I want to save myself from manually trying to make it conform, I can just use the add-in right here. So I've highlighted the code that I want to apply the tidyverse style guide to. And then under add-ins, I'm going to go to style selection, and it's going to automatically update that for me. And I guess the other part to mention as well is that in order for this add-in to show up, you do need to make sure that you have the styler package installed first.
Yeah, I love that. I think that when I'm teaching people that are learning R for the very first time, the style is all over the map. And it's something that I always try and just get them a little bit to try and get their code a little bit more legible for themselves and their future selves. When you go back to see code that is unstyled later on, it's just so much harder to sort through.
100%. And it makes it so much easier to work with other people as well.
So since it came up, let me pin you down. Styler or style R? What do you normally
I
say when you're not on a stream?
I don't know. I think if I'm not on a stream, I would probably just say styler, but a lot of the times I do say package names with the R at
Yeah.
the end. I think it's just because styler actually sounds like it could be a word, whereas
Yeah.
a lot of them don't sound
Yeah.
like they could be a word unless they have the R on there as like a separate
Yeah.
thing.
I think that's a good sort of line to draw. I tend to say tidier
Okay, yeah.
and I say dplyr as well,
Yeah.
which I
That
think
one makes sense because like the Hex logo has a
applier.
plier on it. So I think that one is it's settled on that one.
Yeah. Well, so much of what I do and what we do is reading, right? And it's sometimes less oral than in some other fields, and so pronunciation is a little bit less sometimes fixed. I think Styler is a good example. Um, so I am going to show a little something here. Once I can find my RStudio in my share screen. There we go. So I was going to talk just a tiny bit about getting my RStudio console set up. When you first install RStudio, it looks kind of like this. I'm pretty zoomed in as usual. You've got your script window in the upper left, and then your console right below it. And then on the right, you have your environment history, etc., and then files, plots, etc. And for me, I don't end up using this stuff on the right very much. Occasionally I need things in the viewer, for instance, or in the plot viewer. Occasionally I look in my environment, but I never look in my history really. So I change that right off the bat. And so what I'm going to do is go to View and Panes, and I'm going to put my console on the right. There we go. And then a lot of times what I end up doing is I'll be just code, code, code over here, and then I can see the output on the right. So library tidyverse, we'll go ahead and do something that I actually will code. There we go. And if it were actually useful or interesting output, or more useful and more interesting output, I would actually have a little more space to read it and everything wouldn't be crowded in. The other thing that I think is really common when you're first getting set up or once you've coded for a little while and are thinking a little bit more about those quality of life issues, is the just the appearance that you have here. So I'm going to go this time to my global options under my tools. Here's where the zooming in all the way is going to be a little bit awkward. Maybe I'll zoom back out somewhat. If I, oh, I can't. And under editor theme, you have many different options. And so there's a number of dark options here. Cobalt's one that a couple of my friends use. I know the dark options are very popular. I saw you were in a lighter option, Melissa.
I am, yeah. Yeah, I prefer it. Find it keeps me awake a little bit more.
Yeah, I have that as well. I feel similarly about that. It's definitely not as popular, I find though.
So the setup that you had, I think that's really interesting. How did you decide on that setup specifically?
I wish I could cite a source. I read it somewhere. And I really try and point when I get a good piece of knowledge. I try and point, on my stream where I picked it up, and I just can't cite a source for that. I read it on somebody's blog or something or other, and it just immediately made sense to me.
Yeah.
And so when I have a class in my R, when I have a new R programming class, I have them make that change immediately. And I think they're generally kind of happy for that one.
Yeah, I think so too.
Yeah.
And the other thing that's nice is that you can kind of like minimize the other stuff in a way that makes sense because the minimizes kind of work like downwards instead of
Yes.
side to side.
Yeah.
So yeah, if you have the console right underneath the script, you're probably never using those minimize buttons, but with the way that you have it, you can easily minimize those other two panes.
I'm a big believer in sort of best personal practices and just paying attention to um what really is working for you. And I don't think there's a right answer on any of this. I think for a lot of people, those dark themes are more readable or more soothing or something. But if that's not the case for you, then stick with what works for you. And I think when you combine that philosophy with sort of a learning mentality, it can be really powerful.
Absolutely.
Mhm. Well, it's great chatting with you, Melissa. Let's do this again really soon.
Yeah, I'd love to. Thanks so much for having me
Yeah.
today.
So again, Melissa Van Bussel with GG Not 2. I'm Andrew Gard with Equitable Equations. We'll make sure that there are links to both of our channels down below. If you found Melissa through me, make sure you subscribe to hers and vice versa, I hope.
Absolutely.